It's 7:14 on a Tuesday morning. You're sitting in traffic, coffee going cold in the cup holder, check engine light glowing on the dashboard. You've been ignoring it for 2 weeks. You know what it means. Somewhere between $800 and $1,500 you don't have sitting in savings. Your phone buzzes. Rent reminder. Your stomach tightens just slightly. Not because you can't pay it, you can. You always do. But because paying it means another month where nothing's left over. Another month of doing everything right and still feeling like you're losing ground. You make $52,000 a year. You have a degree. You contribute to your 401k. You don't buy designer anything. You cook at home most nights. On paper, you're solidly middle class. And you have $2,100 in your savings account. According to recent Federal Reserve data, the median household average has about $5,300 in savings. Not the average, the median. Half of all households have less than that. You're not failing. You're not even behind. You're right in the middle of the American financial experience. And the middle is a place where one car repair, one medical bill, one anything can turn your month upside down. This isn't a story about poverty. It's a story about a specific economic altitude where millions of Americans get stuck. Not poor enough for help, not wealthy enough for momentum, just suspended. And if you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, but somehow still treading water, you're not imagining it. There's a wall, and it's right around $50,000. Here's what the headlines tell you. The economy is strong. Unemployment is near historic lows. Wages are rising. The stock market's been climbing. Consumer spending is solid. Here's what your bank account tells you. You can't afford to move. You can't afford to buy a house. You can't afford to take that job that pays less but might make you happier. You're one bad month away from using the credit card. Again. Both things can be true at the same time. Because what you're living through isn't economic collapse, it's economic separation. A quiet divergence between people who own assets and people who sell their time, between wealth that compounds automatically and paychecks that evaporate by the 15th. And right in the middle of that separation, there's a specific income range where the math stops working, where the American financial system, designed to reward savers and investors, begins to penalize earners who can't save or invest enough to matter. The $50,000 wall isn't a conspiracy. It's a mechanism, and once you see how it works, everything clicks into place. Let's start with the number that defines your position. According to Census Bureau data, the median household income in the United States sits around $75,000. That means half of all households make less, half make more. But here's what that number hides. That's household income, not individual. In many cases, that's 2 people working, 2 W-2s, 2 commutes, 2 sets of everything. Your median individual income, if you're working full-time, is closer to $50,000 to $55,000. Now let's translate that into your actual life. If you're making $52,000 a year, your take-home after federal tax, state tax, Social Security, and Medicare is roughly $39,000 to $41,000, depending on where you live. That's about $3,300 a month hitting your checking account. That's your financial oxygen, everything you have to work with. Now watch what happens to it. Median rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in the US is around $1,500, higher in cities, lower in some suburbs, but let's use $1,500 as the middle. You're at $1,800 left. Car payment and insurance, $450. You need the car to get to work. Public transit isn't an option for most Americans. You're at $1,350. Groceries, $320. That's not restaurants. That's cooking at home, meal planning, buying store brand. You're at $1,030. Utilities, phone, internet, $220. You're at $810. Student loan payment, $240. That's close to the median for borrowers. You're at $570. Gas and car maintenance, $180. You're at $390. Health insurance premium and copays, $160. You're at $230. And you haven't gone out to dinner once. You haven't bought new work clothes. You haven't paid for a haircut or fixed that check engine light or gone to the dentist or done literally anything except survive. This is the arithmetic of the $50,000 wall. You're not living recklessly, you're covering the basics, and at the end of the month, there's almost nothing left. But here's where it gets interesting. The Federal Reserve runs a survey every year asking Americans a simple question. If you faced an unexpected $400 expense, could you cover it? Around 37% of Americans say no. They'd have to borrow it, put it on a credit card, sell something, or simply couldn't pay it. $400. Not $4,000, not $10,000. The cost of one minor car repair, one urgent care visit, one broken appliance. And this isn't just people making $30,000. This includes households earning $50,000, $60,000, even $75,000. Because the issue isn't only how much you make, it's how much you keep. The personal savings rate in the United States, according to recent Bureau of Economic Analysis data, hovers between 4 and 5%. That means for every dollar you earn, you're saving a nickel. In the 1970s, Americans saved around 12% of their income. In the 1980s, roughly 10%. It's been falling for decades. Not because you're less disciplined than your parents, but because the cost of existing has outpaced what you earn. Housing, healthcare, education, childcare, the four expenses that define middle-class life, all of them have grown faster than wages, and when your foundation costs more, you have less room to build anything on top of it. Here's another number that might feel familiar. The median credit card debt for households that carry a balance is roughly $6,000. The average APR on a credit card right now sits between 21 and 24%. Let's do the math on your life. If you're carrying $6,000 at 22% APR and you make the minimum payment of about $150 a month, it will take you more than 6 years to pay it off, and you'll pay over $4,000 in interest. You'll pay $10,000 total to clear a $6,000 balance. Now imagine you're making $52,000 a year. Your margin is already thin. Then your car breaks down. $1,100. Repair. You don't have it in savings, so it goes on the card. Now you owe $7,100. Your minimum payment goes up. Your margin shrinks further. This is how you get stuck, not because you're irresponsible, not because you're buying luxury items, but because the math of survival at $50,000 leaves no room for error, and life is nothing but error. One medical bill, one vet bill, one wedding you have to travel to, one funeral, one anything, and the card becomes the only option. And once you're on the card, the interest starts eating your future. But here's where it gets complicated. Because while this is happening to you, something completely different is happening to people who already own assets. If you owned a home in 2019, your equity has likely increased by 30 to 40% depending on your market. If you own stocks, the S&P 500 has delivered significant returns over the past 5 years. If you owned investment property, rental income has climbed as rents surged. The people who already had assets benefited massively from low interest rates, rising asset prices, and monetary policy designed to stabilize markets. Meanwhile, you got priced out of home ownership. Your savings got eroded by inflation. You couldn't invest meaningfully because there was nothing left over to invest. Both things can be true at the same time. The economy can be excellent for people with portfolios and brutal for people with paychecks. That's not a contradiction, that's the design. Because the American economy rewards ownership. It taxes labor. Assets appreciate. Earnings evaporate. And when you're at $52,000 with no assets to speak of, you're outside the wealth-building engine entirely. You're not participating in it, you're fueling it. Let's talk about why this happens without villains. Your employer is a rational actor. They want to minimize costs and maximize profit. Labor is a cost. So when they can automate, outsource, or keep wages flat, they do. That's not malice, that's incentive. Your landlord is a rational actor. They want to maximize rent. If demand is high and supply is low, prices go up. That's not greed, that's market function. Credit card companies are rational actors. They make money on interest. If you carry a balance, that's revenue. The system is designed to make borrowing easy and paying off hard. That's not predatory, that's business model. Your bank is a rational actor. They pay you almost nothing on your savings account because they don't have to compete for it. Where else are you going to put your money? None of these are villains. They're participants in a system optimized for returns on capital. And if you don't own capital, you're not the customer. You're the product. This is why the $50,000 wall exists. You're earning enough to be a reliable consumer, but not enough to be an owner. You're in the spending lane, not the accumulation lane. And the gap between those two lanes has never been wider. Let's go back to your $52,000 salary and really see what's happening. Take home $3,300 per month. Rent $1,500. Car payment and insurance $450. Groceries $320. Utilities and phone $220. Student loans $240. Gas and maintenance $180. Health costs $160. Total $3,070. Margin $230. That's your financial oxygen. $230 a month. That's $2,760 a year. Now here's the question nobody asks. How are you supposed to build wealth with $230 a month? Financial advisors tell you to have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved for emergencies. That's $9,000 to $18,000. At $230 a month, that takes 39 to 78 months. That's 3 to 6 years of perfect execution. No emergencies, no unexpected costs, no life happening. You're supposed to save 15% of your income for retirement. That's $650 a month. You have $230. You're supposed to save for a down payment on a house. 10% on a median-priced home of around $400,000 is $40,000. At $230 a month, that's 174 months. That's 14 years. The math doesn't work. Not because you're failing, but because the system assumes a margin you don't have. It assumes you're earning $100,000 when you're earning $52,000. It assumes 2 incomes when you have 1. It assumes no debt when you're carrying the average burden.
And here's the thing nobody tells you. If you're reading this and you're behind the median, if you have less than $5,000 saved, if you're living paycheck to paycheck with occasional help from the credit card, if you feel like you're doing everything wrong, you're not. You're responding rationally to an irrational pressure system. You're not bad with money. The money is bad with you. The game is rigged isn't the right phrase because that implies intention. Nobody sat in a room and designed this to hurt you specifically, but the system evolved to reward people who already have resources. And if you don't, every inch forward is uphill. And if you're ahead of the median, if you've managed to save $8,000 or $12,000 or even $20,000, if you're contributing to retirement and following all the advice, and you still feel stressed, still feel like it's not enough, still feel like one bad quarter could unravel years of discipline, you're not crazy. Because even being ahead of median doesn't mean you're safe. It means you're less vulnerable. And that's not the same thing as secure. The $50,000 wall isn't just about the number on your W-2. It's about margin, the space between what comes in and what goes out. And that space has been shrinking for decades, while the advice stayed the same. Here's the framework that changes everything. Income minus expenses equals margin. Margin is your financial oxygen. It's the only thing that lets you breathe, plan, invest, recover, choose. Everything in personal finance is about protecting and expanding that margin. not your income, not your net worth, your margin. Because you can make $100,000 and have zero margin if your expenses are $99,000. And you can make $52,000 and have real margin if your expenses are $44,000. The system is designed to compress your margin at every turn. Inflation compresses it, rent increases compress it, interest rates on debt compress it, lifestyle creep compresses it, social pressure compresses it. Your only job is to defend it, not by depriving yourself, not by living in a studio eating ramen and avoiding all joy, but by being ruthlessly intentional about what you allow into your fixed cost structure, by recognizing that every subscription, every car payment, every recurring charge is a small claim on your future flexibility. That doesn't mean don't enjoy your life. It means don't automate your stress.
So what do you actually do? 3 levers: calm, practical, realistic. Lever 1. Audit your recurring costs once every 6 months. Not to cut everything, but to see everything. Subscriptions you forgot about, insurance you haven't shopped in 3 years, phone plans that made sense in 2021 but don't now, gym memberships you don't use, streaming services you share with your ex. This isn't about deprivation, it's about awareness. 30 minutes of focused attention can free up $60 to $120 a month. That's $720 to $1,440 a year. That's oxygen. That's the difference between using the credit card or not. Lever 2. Separate survival from status in your head. There's the car that gets you to work reliably, and there's the car that signals you've made it. There's the apartment that gives you a safe place to sleep, and there's the apartment that impresses people who visit twice a year. There's the phone that works, and there's the phone that launched last month. The system profits when you can't tell the difference, when every purchase becomes about identity instead of function. You don't have to live like a monk, you just have to know which expenses are foundation and which are decoration. And right now, you need foundation. Lever 3. Build the smallest viable emergency fund first, then expand it. Not 6 months of expenses, not $15,000. Start with $500, then $1,000, then $2,000. Something that stops the small emergencies from becoming debt spirals. Something that keeps the check engine light from turning into a credit card balance that takes 2 years to clear. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is a buffer between you and disaster. And disaster at $52,000 can be as small as $600. These won't make you rich. They won't vault you over the $50,000 wall into some fantasy tax bracket. But they give you room to breathe. And breathing room is the prerequisite for every good financial decision you'll ever make. If this resonated with you, if you felt seen in this breakdown, consider subscribing. This channel exists to explain the economic mechanisms shaping your life, not to sell you courses, not to promise you'll retire at 35, just to help you see the game clearly so you can play your position better. The $50,000 wall is real, but it's not a ceiling. It's a pressure point, a place where the math gets hard and the voices get loud, and it feels like everyone else figured out something you missed. You didn't miss anything. The equation is broken. But once you see it, once you understand that margin is the only metric that matters, once you stop measuring yourself against impossible standards and start measuring yourself against your own increasing stability, everything shifts. You're not trying to win capitalism, you're trying to build a life that doesn't require perfection to survive. A life where one bad month doesn't erase 6 good ones. A life where you can make a choice based on what you want, not just what you can barely afford. And that's not just possible, that's the entire point.